Should I?
Hey there, everybody. You know me with Apartment Queen Investments, Kaylee McMahon. We have got Carrie Young with us today, and we are going to be checking out something that you need to know how to do. Whether you're a passive investor, whether you're an active investor, it's really important that when you're figuring out why you'd want to invest in a certain market, that you understand why you want to invest in a certain market or why not. So Carrie has and I both have used some tips and tricks from other industry professionals, and we're going to go over today how to use those. So, Carrie, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit before we get started.
Thank you for having me on, Kaylee. My name is Carrie Young, and my husband and I formed Silica Ridge Capital Group in 2016, and we needed some relief from taxes we were paying on my husband's W-2 job. We had followed the Dave Ramsey plan, and we had no debt, but we had massive taxes. And we attended Dave Ramsey's legacy seminar, and we just didn't really see that there was anything more for us to do because he just says, pay for everything in cash. And we couldn't really conceive of buying an apartment building for cash, but we knew we wanted real estate and we didn't want single family homes. So we got a mentor and we started learning and investing. And initially we mainly invested passively, and some of those deals turned out well and some did not. And we also got into, it's called a tenant in common. Also, you could look at it as a joint venture, a small group of people coming together and buying a property, and you can take advantage of bonus depreciation to a much greater extent. And you can change up the business plan as you're going along without needing to worry about passive investors and your fiduciary responsibility to them to always consider them first. So I've since gone on now to do 2 syndications, and I also have gone full cycle on the first tenant in common, and we doubled our money. So that was pretty exciting in 2 years. And then now we have 2 more joint ventures as well. But what happened was last year I took Neil Bawa's boot camp. And everyone had said, he's kind of this real estate data scientist guru. And I really didn't know what they meant by that. But as I started going through his different courses, it was online, of course, because of COVID, I realized that I thought I knew why now some of my deals, even with great deal sponsors, were not performing. So I decided to start keeping track, and I went through all Neil's recommendations for how to look at a property, and I realized, wow, these properties aren't doing very well. And they are not in areas he would have ever recommended buying either passively or as a sponsor. So now it's really helped me with my whole process of looking for properties, because once you start buying properties, the brokers get to know you. Even if I always say, you get to know the brokers, take the tours, give them great feedback, but rather than wasting their time, if you know it's a property you really don't want to buy, you can run it through Neil's Analyzer. And I've updated it a bit to suit my tastes. But essentially, you could be saving yourself time, because if the median income in the area, median household income, let's say it's $30,000, you divide that by 12 months, and pretty soon you're realizing that rent bump you want to take for $150 that everyone else in the market seems to be getting, but CoStar quite can't support it. These people don't have the money to pay that rent bump. So your whole business plan is flawed right from the start. And just so you know, lenders are complicit in this. And I love my lenders, but a lot of times they want to make a deal work so bad that they'll overlook some of these things. Occasionally my lender will say, no, can't do that area. And this was actually before I knew why with Neil. But now I have not yet, since I've taken Neil's course, brought a deal to my lender where they said, sorry, that area isn't going to work. Or we can only give you 60% LTV because of the area. So anyhow, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you what my tool looks like. And again, I've kind of customized this for myself. It's disabled for screen sharing. And I will say that I primarily use free sources. I often get CoStars from brokers, but you have to remember CoStar can be quite flawed. It can be flawed for several reasons. One reason is that when CoStar has basically telemarketers that call properties, and they say, hey, what are you getting for your 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom? Running any specials, concessions? And I have found that I was in the office with doing a property tour, and the manager on site, she said they weren't running any specials just to get the guy off the phone. Well, guess what? They were running a big concession. They had half month free rent. Also, a lot of times they can't reach the managers. They don't return their calls or they don't pick up the phone. So they just go online and try to get sources for the rents. If the property is being managed by Yardi, they do have access to that through their software because they're all part of one company. Might be RealPage. But many times they're running as blind as anyone trying to figure out the rents. And additionally, like our property manager, we tell her to just give the very basic information of our rents. Same thing. We don't really want a whole bunch of information out there about our property. Some of the programs we're running are proprietary. We've spent a lot of money with a marketing agency, and we're not interested in sharing it. So anyhow, the other way they can be flawed is the broker may have picked some really nice comps. You think they're nice comps. They aren't necessarily comps. They can control who they pick in CoStar, and to their credit, they're representing seller. They better make the product look good. But those may not really be the true comps. And you only really know that once you either get in your car and drive around, go into the comps. I can get property managers to talk to me. I'm super honest. I say I'm interested in the area. I give them a $10 Starbucks card and we start chatting. And sometimes it's like 2 hours goes by and they're showing me all their units. But you need to determine the rents that are on there. So you've got now, you need to find your data sources. So I'll share with you again my screen. And my data sources are mostly free. You can use bestplaces.com and put in the zip code. You can use citydata.com and put in the zip code, or you can use Neighborhood Scout. Here's the benefit sometimes of using several services. Neighborhood Scout, I have a paid, basically unlimited plan for the year for, I think, $1,400. I could get just 10 reports a year for a very small amount of money. And if you really are focusing on an area, I think it would behoove you to get that report. But basically, Neil wants to see the median household income between $41,500 to $71,500. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but just suffice it to say that's what he says. And so on a property I was interested in Arlington, I always do city data, median income first, and it showed 28,000 was the median income. So then I wanted to look into this a little bit more, and I realized this is hard to see, but in Best Places, median income was 40,000, but in Neighborhood Scout, it was 31. Again, they break up the submarket a little bit differently. So none of those sources even meet the criteria, so that gets a red. They want to see median contract rent between 700 to 1,000, and this is different than average rent or medium, or it's different than median average rent. I'm sorry, it's median, and this is found exclusively on citydata.com. This is a very important number. Why you want it to be over 700? Because if you're trying to raise rents to 850 and everyone's down here at 5, 6, 700, you're just going to have a very uphill battle, no matter all the great upgrades you're doing or not. There's going to be too many properties across the street that people can just move to, and they're not as upgraded. Unemployment rate should not be more than 2% higher than the nearby metro. In this case, the unemployment rate on city data is 5.84, and I'm just taking Dallas because Arlington's a little closer to Dallas in some aspects, 6.5 unemployment rate. So that's great. It's not more than 2% higher. 2% higher would be 8.5 or above. The poverty level should be below 20%, but ideally 15. I'll just tell you this. When you get a property, even at 20% poverty level, it can be more and more challenging to hit your criteria, because that's people who are on assistance. You don't want to take vouchers, because when you take vouchers from the government in general, the Section 8 program, they're now calling it they have all sorts of names for it, but essentially they determine your rents. So it's by your zip code. So you can be the fanciest, newest, nicest thing, but your zip code's going to determine how much you get paid, and you don't want them to determine your rents. So you want to find an area that doesn't have such high poverty, and this area has very high poverty. Neil says you want a diverse ethnic mix, no greater than 75% of one ethnicity. And the reason he said this, especially in a large metroplex, is because you start realizing that there's a whole group of people that are not going to come and rent at your property. And that's bad, because let's just say, boundary lines are always shifting. Our property used to be almost 90% Hispanic. It's now 50% Hispanic, 30% white, and 20% black. Actually, our tenants, we don't have issues with our tenants getting along at all. Everything's going great. And we love the fact that people can come in and see anyone of any color, of any background, and they feel comfortable. So actually, you'll notice on my property, it does say my neighborhood's a little above what you'd really like to see of one ethnicity, but it's actually changing rapidly. I didn't know this. I bought my property a long time ago, but it really helps when someone can come in and they feel comfortable seeing what someone like themselves. Is the property in the path of progress? I call it path of progress. Starbucks, Home Depot, National Grocery, Chick-fil-A. You probably know those companies spend a ton of money deciding where their locations are going to be. And that is really critical. Oops. So here's the problem with this property. Well, I kind of messed it up here, but the problem with this property is that there's no national grocery chain nearby. There are some other Starbucks nearby and that, but no national grocery is not a good sign. That means that they know that people aren't making enough money to support. So oftentimes there's little local groceries that specialize in certain different ethnicities. But honestly, again, it's the kind of thing where you just want to be careful, because they've done a lot of work and they realize their grocery store can't make it there. Crime in the zip code should be under 500 using city data, or if using best places, under 41.5. Occasionally, I don't know why, but I can't find crime numbers in city data. So this property is fine with that. The school should have a great schools rating of 5 or above. This is actually my own criteria. I look on apartments.com and I can see what the rating is. And for example, our rating is 6 out of 10 for all the 3 schools, or 4 schools if you want to take choice schools combined. And actually, we have a lot of people who live in our apartment who have children, and they say they don't want to move east of I-35 West because the schools are rated horribly. So they're willing to pay us $100, $150 more for the same unit they could get east of the freeway. So I believe that is actually a very, very important criteria if you're looking at the neighborhood and the neighborhood is showing there's a lot of young families. Again, you can get that data in Neighborhood Scout or city data. Obviously, in an area where it's all young people, this is irrelevant. You can just black it out. This is something that I also added: owner renter percentage in the neighborhood. I get this from Neighborhood Scout, my paid source. You don't really want all renters in the neighborhood because it becomes a sea of apartments. So it's good to be known as in an area where apartments is. But if you're in 95% apartments, you raise your rent, and I can guarantee you there's going to be 3 people around you who bought the property 20 years ago. They have a low basis. They don't care about raising rents. And your tenants are going to walk right around the corner, because real estate is typically hyper-local. And let me tell you, these people, they don't want to leave their friends and their dog sitter and everything else. So they may just go right around the corner. So I like to see an area that has some owners, and I would consider this acceptable. Probably I'd like to see, the lowest I'd like to see is a 20-80 split. And then percentage of the types of homes. Again, you want some single family homes, not all multifamily. And this is something that I've picked up just over years of talking is, when you think of a multifamily neighborhood, it typically doesn't have the best crime rate. It's kind of, in a lot of areas, especially when you're dealing with C-class properties, it's kind of the wrong side of the tracks. So single family homes actually help keep the neighborhood up. It improves the schools. So I just like to know when I'm buying, what is that percentage? And I like to see, I wouldn't want to see more than 80% multifamily in there. This is an interesting stat: children in the neighborhood in poverty. In Houston, this doesn't work at all. For some reason, it's free and reduced lunches they put in there somehow. So any child getting that is considered in poverty. And actually, there's a lot of criteria that go into getting that. But if you have like 60% of children in the neighborhood in poverty, that's very telling. That means that probably a great percentage of those parents are in poverty, which will show up also in your poverty level. So this does not surprise me because they've got 33.6 and there they've got 22.8. Also in my neighborhood scout report, which is, again, my paid service, I like to look at the rental price trend over the last 5 years. Does it mean it's going to continue going up? No. In fact, maybe it's gone up so much, it might not go up at all. But I just like to know what's been happening in that neighborhood. And I don't necessarily have a criteria for what I'm looking at, but I just like knowing. And then the vacancy trend, unfortunately, I should put there, sorry, it's gone up 1.2%. So it's not a deal breaker, but I just like knowing those kind of things. So now I'm looking at this property, and you might imagine, I was very kind to the broker. I just said, you know what, we're looking to do a joint venture with this particular property. A group of us want to buy it and operate it without a syndication, and my partners simply cannot accept cannot accept some of the neighborhood criteria. Boom. You know what he did? He sent me another property he was holding in his pocket. No harm, no foul. I don't go in and say, your property is awful. It's got all these terrible characteristics. But a lot of the brokers know that I'm a little more picky, and I don't take tours until I've done this, which I feel it prevents me from wasting their time and my own time. And you know, this is my own property in Fort Worth, and I'll just tell you right now, we're 100% occupied. I think we have a waiting list for our 1 bedroom, and if it weren't for one tenant who has mental health issues, I believe we'd be 100% collected. So it's a great property, you'd say, right? It's classic C tenant base, but the neighborhood's improving quite a bit. It's going up in median household income. It's just east of TCU. Why the contract rent there is so low, I don't know. But this is a good example. Pretty much it's all green. If I was looking at this property now and I only saw one red, I'd go look at it. I can't tell you why our median contract rent is that low. Mostly we have all single family homes surrounding and an apartment that's a Class A that charges $2,000 a month in rent. So I don't know where that comes from. But I would absolutely look at this property again. That said, I know the struggle that we've had to get it where it is. This didn't just roll off an easy street 100%. I know the tenants we've had to deal with. I know the tenants we've had to evict, the security guards we've had to hire because we had a drug dealer that slipped through the screening process because my old property manager wasn't being diligent. So just imagine the struggles I've had here. And again, thankful for a lot of them. They've helped us learn. But just imagine what you might be going through if you're going to be getting into something like this. And for me, I'm just starting to realize, again, with my passive properties that are in areas like this, with asset managers far more experienced than me, they can't turn them around. And the thing that's saving us is they underwrote a higher reversion cap rate. So they are going to be able to sell. We're not going to make money because of the NOI going up. We're making money because of the cap rate compressing. So that's something that I think that pretty much everyone should be looking at. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of newbies who are focusing on these kind of properties, and I almost think it's a shame because they're already going to have struggles from being newer, and especially if they don't have a more experienced GP with them. So I just think as both a passive and an active investor, it's very important to pay attention to this. Neil has another sheet, and I'm not going to get into that here because he has a completely free webinar. It's called, I think, City Focus. You can go to Neil Bawa, Neal space BAWA, and you can look on his website, and I believe it's even under Multifamily Boot Camp, and he has so many free webinars, and they are just filled with information. You can get like your master's in apartment investing through watching those. And one of them is on City Focus. So here's the thing. All of DFW, all of Houston, they all meet the criteria for a city to invest in. But when you're looking at a city, for example, if the median income has not gone up by a certain percent, he says, do not even invest in the city. Do you know what one of those cities is that shocked me? Because I've heard great things about Huntsville, Alabama, actually Birmingham. Birmingham has not had median income going up enough in 20 years, and they've lost jobs and they've lost population in the last 20 years. And that means that suddenly you've got your amazing deal, but that city can't support your business plan. The city itself can't support it. Maybe the neighborhood is just B plus, awesome, you're so excited. Now, would I ever not invest in Birmingham? I don't know. That's a big pause for me. It's not in my backyard, so I'd have to take time to drive there and really check it out. I would dig deep into what industries might be coming that can help turn that around. But a job loss when so many areas are experiencing job gains is just a big red flag. So I really encourage you to go to his website and read those. And I'm not paid for him. I don't work for him, but this has just helped me so much. And every single deal I'm going to look at, I run through here. And I feel like I'm spending my time so much more efficiently now.
I have one question on something that we covered. So the unemployment rate should not be more than 2% higher than the nearby metro.
Yes.
I know you can get the unemployment rate by like going to City Dash Data, which is on that sheet.
Yes, let me, I can stop sharing and I'll share. I have pulled up another screen which has city data, and I think it'll be very helpful for everyone to see that.
It says it shouldn't be more than 2% higher than the closest
Metro area, let's call it.
So basically you're like, okay, like, I don't know, San Antonio, and I'm trying to think of it.
Let's say San Antonio has an unemployment rate of 7%. The property has an unemployment rate in that little submarket or that area of 7.9. That's okay.
You're saying the property versus the, okay, got it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So now we're looking at city data. And the one tricky thing on city data is that this will come very colorful and it will annoy you because you will be saying, oh my goodness, I can't even find my neighborhood. So what you have to do is you have to go, here's the thing, my settings are so fixed, I don't even know how to undo them anymore. But basically you want to move your opacity to 0% so you can actually read the street names. So what I do is I pull up my map of the area and I get close into the streets. So my properties cross streets are Hemphill and Barry. And then I know my properties right in here. Here's the information that pops up. Median household income, population by race, median contract rent, unemployment, residents below the poverty level. You can even find the median resident age. See, this is why we have a lot of children in our property, because there's young families. Then what you do is you go in here and you change this criteria up to crime, and you just take city data crime index. That encompasses everything. And now you get the crime over here, 363. And it will still tell you all the information here. Now let's just move. This is fascinating. Oh, wow, the median income popped up. The poverty level popped up. There's a couple complexes in here that are, they have some people who I believe are on Section 8 vouchers. So that's interesting. But the median house value popped way up. Well, now we're getting close to Fort Worth. Okay, and now we've got, look at median contract rent. You know why? Students. Those are students in there.
And that's
residents below the poverty level. That's kind of an anomaly to me. I'm guessing students get counted as below the poverty level because a lot of them don't really make any money. So there's sometimes anomalies. This can be a little tedious to learn to work on your map and kind of where it is, but it's a great tool. Now I'm going to share with you my my neighborhood scout report. And again, this is a paid report, not necessary. You can still get data other places. Interesting, they break out the neighborhood differently than mine did. Mine broke it out kind of like this. So Neighborhood Scout says, oh, I see a different submarket. It's not better or worse, it's just different, so you need to know that. And it's interesting, here they call this my micro neighborhood. Okay, so I'm just gonna type in here, and I'm gonna go to median. Okay, median household. Okay, let's see what they pop up with. Oh, they say my median household income $60,588. I know why. North of me, as you continue farther north, my submarket there's some very nice single family homes, and people have to qualify for that. this report is usually 30 some pages long. There's also a lot of data that's really not relevant. Like they'll go through here and they'll talk about they rate the area. This is mostly for housing market analysis. We aren't housing, we're apartments. So I pay no attention to this. They essentially say that houses in this area are not going to appreciate at all. Maybe it's taking into account the fact that there's been a lot of appreciation already. And then again, some of this is relevant, but some isn't really that relevant. And I do like reading these reports. You can get a good feel for your submarket. Here, let's just pause a minute. We're spending what? $19 million, you're buying a property, you're bringing in 50 or 60 passive investors. My opinion is you should possibly spend a little money or a little bit of time in really understanding what's happening in that submarket beyond just a report that was prepared for you by a broker. And when I'm going out there and I'm serious about a property, I spend the day. I get in my car, I pack my lunch, I have my favorite drink with me, non-alcoholic, of course, and I drive to what I believe are the competitor properties. And like I said, I go in, I'm very, very polite. And I really get to know the area. I drive around the single family homes. I look to see how they're being kept. I drive by the schools. I really want to understand that submarket. In fact, I heard one of the owners of Madeira, who's a huge company out in Lubbock, and they buy all over Texas.
I know
He
Charlie.
said, what?
Charlie?
Yes, Charlie. He said there was a webinar I was listening to him do, and he said he kind of had nothing going on, and he just spent all this time driving Arlington. He said, I knew Arlington so well, I could tell you, I more than a person who lived in Arlington. And that's the kind of familiarity you want to have with your property, because sometimes just the littlest anomalies you can find. And, another thing I'll share is for our property in Iowa, it doesn't meet the city criteria. It's under 100,000. Neil says your population should be above. But one thing that really drew us was that it was a D+ maintained property, but it was in a B or B+ neighborhood. And the location was great. It was right by the freeways. It would never flood. It was up on a bluff. So I didn't know about these programs. I didn't know anything about this. So we bought it, and we were fortunate. It has worked out. But I knew inherently, I liked the idea that the neighborhood, when I flew up there, I drove it, and I liked that the neighborhood was so pleasant. And if people want to live in that neighborhood with outstanding schools, one of the best elementaries in the whole city, they can live in our apartment. And sure enough, we do have a lot of 3 bedrooms, and it's families in there. So I encourage you to do this if you're passively invested and one of your deals is struggling. Just see if it could be the area. There's a lot of reasons a deal can struggle, and sometimes it can be the best person in charge of asset management, and things just go awry. I mean, chillers break and need $50,000 worth of repairs. It happens. But just check a few of your properties with the area. And again, Neil can give you more information on this, and feel free to reach out to me. I've trained a lot of people how to do this.
Carrie, speaking of, if someone was interested in reaching out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, my email is Carrie, Carrie, at Silica, SILICARIDGE.com, silicaridge.com. My phone is 425-466-4795. And I am on Facebook as Carrie Moore Young.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. You're going to kick my butt. While we were doing this, I just analyzed 3 properties really quick.
I love it. See, that's what I want.
And they all check the boxes.
You go.
Well, except for the schools. One of them, there's like a 5 and a 5 and a 4 and a 4. And I'm like,
You know what? I've seen a lot worse. It's when you start getting the 2s and 3s. I would give that a yellow probably.
Yeah, I mean, the rest is breed. So it's like, okay, it's by a golf course. Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. We're good.
Carrie, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time and being so thorough. I also like the way that you're very calm as well, because when I present things, sometimes I go too fast. So this would be something I could see replaying and replaying to get back to points where you covered something. This was awesome.
I've watched some of my webinars from my mentors or people who I've paid for training or free training 3 times. I'll even take notes and then I go back and read my notes and I watch again. So I understand.
It's incredible. Yeah. So for all of y'all out there who are looking at purchasing properties, it's so important to know the market that it's in. It's so important to know, even as we covered today, the population of people in your property as compared to the market itself. You know, what are you dealing with? Because that will kind of give you a little determination of what's coming in, what's going out, what's possible to bring in and not. So yeah, Carrie, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time today and for helping to educate my she-vestors and anyone else
Great.
who hold of these videos.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.